The woman who heard three words that changed everything. Massachusetts, 1780. In the winter of 1780, when the rivers of Massachusetts froze so hard that wagons crossed them like roads, a woman named Mercy Allen heard three words that unraveled the rest of her life. At the time, she was no one of consequence. She was not mentioned in sermons or court records, not praised in letters or condemned in pamphlets. She lived on the edge of a village that barely deserved the name, a scatter of timber houses crouched against the wind like animals waiting out a storm. Her husband had died 5 years earlier of a fever that swept through the countryside and took the weak and unlucky. Mercy survived because she had always survived. That was her talent, endurance. She spun wool. She tended a small garden when the ground allowed it. She prayed because that was what women did, and because in 1780 Massachusetts, prayer was less a comfort than a duty. God was everywhere. Judgment was constant. Silence itself felt watched. The winter that year was unlike anyone remembered. Snow fell early and did not leave. Chimneys cracked from the cold. Ink froze in bottles. Birds dropped dead from the sky. People said it was a sign, though no one agreed what it signified. Some whispered it was punishment for rebellion, for daring to break from the crown. Others said it was proof that God favored the cause, and was hardening his people like iron. Mercy listened and said little. She had learned long ago that words were dangerous things. On a night in late January, when the moon shone sharp as bone through bare trees, Mercy woke to the sound of knocking. It was not loud. That was what unsettled her most. It was careful, almost polite, as though whoever stood outside her door understood the value of restraint. She wrapped herself in a shawl and took the candle from her table. The flame trembled, though there was no draught. For a moment she considered staying silent. Visitors after dark were rarely bearers of good news. But the knocking came again, 3 soft taps, evenly spaced. Mercy opened the door. A man stood on her threshold. He was unfamiliar, which in a place this small was reason enough for fear. He wore a dark coat dusted with snow and no hat, though the cold was severe enough to burn exposed skin. His hair was gray, his face lined, but his eyes were sharp and unblinking. "I beg your pardon, Mistress Allen," he said, speaking her name as though they were already acquainted. "May I come in?" She should have refused. Every instinct warned her not to let him cross the threshold. But there was something in his voice, not warmth, not menace, but certainty, that left no room for argument. She stepped aside. The man entered her home and glanced around as if taking inventory. The fire was low. The room smelled of wool and ash. He did not remove his coat. He did not sit. "I will not stay long," he said. "I only wish to see you." "You have," Mercy replied. "Now say your business." The man smiled faintly, as though amused by her directness. "You will hear words tonight," he said. "3 of them. They will come to you when you least expect them. When they do, you must listen." Mercy frowned. "Who are you?" "Someone who has already heard them." The candle flickered violently, then steadied. Mercy felt a sudden chill, deeper than the cold outside. "What words?" she asked. The man stepped back toward the door. That would spoil their purpose. Before she could protest, he opened the door and disappeared into the snow, leaving no footprints behind him. Mercy stood awake for the rest of the night, heart pounding, ears straining for sounds that did not come. At dawn she told herself it had been a dream born of hunger and cold. She resumed her chores. Life demanded routine, even when the world felt unsteady. For weeks, nothing happened. Winter dragged on. The war dragged on. People died quietly in their beds or loudly on distant fields. Mercy attended meetings at the meeting house, sang the psalms, bowed her head when required. If the strange visitor crossed her mind, she pushed the memory away like a bad thought during prayer. Then, on a gray afternoon in early March, Mercy went to the river. The ice had begun to weaken, though it still appeared solid. She was careful where she stepped, testing with her boot, listening for cracks. The village children were forbidden to play there now, but Mercy had come for water, as she always had. As she bent to lower her bucket, she heard a voice behind her. "Do you see?" She turned sharply, nearly losing her footing. No one stood there. The river lay silent beneath its skin of ice. "Do you see?" the voice said again, closer now, not loud but impossibly clear. Mercy's breath caught. The world seemed to narrow, the air pressing in around her. Then the third word came. Remember. 3 words. Do you see? Remember. They did not echo. They did not fade. They settled into her like stones dropped into deep water. Mercy staggered back from the river, her bucket forgotten. Her heart raced, but her mind felt strangely calm, as though something had been decided without her consent. From that day on, she began to notice things she had never noticed before. She saw how often men contradicted themselves in prayer, asking for mercy while craving punishment. She saw how neighbors spoke kindly while measuring each other for weakness. She saw the way the minister's hands shook when he preached of certainty, and how his eyes darted when someone asked a question he could not answer. At night, Mercy dreamed of doors opening into rooms she had already been in. She dreamed of standing before crowds who listened in absolute silence, not because they were afraid, but because they understood. Word began to spread. People came to Mercy's door asking what troubled her, because something about her had changed. She did not seek them out. She did not raise her voice. She simply answered when asked, and her answers unsettled those who heard them. She spoke of hypocrisy without naming names. She spoke of memory as a burden God placed on humanity so it would not lie to itself. She spoke of seeing not visions, not prophecy, but clarity. Some said she was touched by grace. Others said she was dangerous. By summer, the whispers reached the meeting house. Mercy was asked to explain herself before the elders. She stood before them calm and unafraid, which frightened them more than anger would have. "What do you claim to know?" one demanded. "I claim only what I have seen," she replied. "And what I remember?" They asked her where her authority came from. She said, "From listening?" That was the wrong answer. In September of 1780, Mercy Allen was ordered to leave the village. No crime was named. No accusation written. It was simply decided that she unsettled the peace. She packed what little she owned and walked away without protest. No one knows where she went. Some claim to see her years later, farther west, speaking quietly to groups gathered beneath trees. Others said she died in the wilderness, alone but unafraid. What remains is only the story that in a year of ice and war, a woman heard 3 words that changed the way she saw the world, and once seen, could never be unseen. And perhaps that is why her name was never written down? Because some truths, once remembered, are harder to erase than ink.